not sure how long of a video I can make for this guy, but I got this on eBay for $60. Said it could receive but didn't transmit. Well, it received, but barely. I'm gonna kind of edit in some other videos here, come back to it, but it received barely. A full S9 signal, actually on this generator, I could go up to X10 and I could barely get an S6 or 7 out of it. It wasn't the meter calibration that was wrong. It was just way off. But I recapped it. I changed a couple of tantalum caps over to electrolytics because I didn't have the same value. And then I started getting about a 1 watt output. And I said, well, I'm just going to go through the alignment. Went through the book over here. Sam's 235 covers this and the 89 GTL. Went through, I've got another signal generator over here also. Anyway, I went through, got everything to come up. I found 2 bad diodes in the receive section that were just open. They worked both ways, like, you know, just like a jumper. So I put some Schottky diodes in there. That's kind of the area where people do that mod anyway. Got the receive working great. Put LEDs in here, but I put some of the LEDs that are kind of yellowish, so they still look like incandescent. But even with the synthesis alignment and going through everything and recapping, I was only getting about a watt output. Doing a signal trace, I was getting a signal to the driver and I was getting a signal to the final. It was just very low. And I was searching in that area for the longest time, trying to find where the signal was dropping. And I just said, you know, for craps and giggles there, this has a 2028 and 2029 driver and final. I don't have any of those, but I've got 1969s and I forget what the driver I put in there, but I took a driver out of a more modern Cobra 29. Same, they're both MPN, about the same specs. But first I just changed the final to a 1969 and I got about 4 watts out. I mean, this is 4 watts peak with putting in a full signal. Just barely 4 watts. The carrier was like half a watt. So I got to digging around. I went and undid all the power mods that they had did, and it kind of dropped even more down to 2 watts. They had all kinds of crazy crap. They took out one of the diodes and had it jumpered. They removed the modulation limiter. They took a capacitor out. I don't know. I just took all that stuff out, but my power dropped even more. About a quarter of a watt swinging to about 2. So I said, well, I was still getting signal to the driver and between the driver and final, and like I said, just for craps and giggles, I went ahead and changed the driver. Next thing I know, here we'll go on to somebody who doesn't matter, channel 6 here, but low scale. This is what I tuned it to. You can get a little more, but about 3.5 watt carrier. Audio, look at the swing. Hello. I put the limiter back in there. This thing looks pretty solid on the scope, actually. Hello, audio, 1, 2, audio. Showing about 4 to 12. I think I set the modulation to about 110, because if I turn this down right about yay. Audio, 1, 2, audio, 1, 2, hello. That's about where it should be when you're talking, but you can actually get this to swing with this 1969 in there to about 27 watts from a 6 watt dead key. But I changed some resistor values and whatnot. I wanted to get my dead key a little under 4 in case I wanted to run an amp. But let me interlace some of the other videos in here of how it looked inside when I started. Well, this is where I'm at so far. Getting her cleaned up, got all these controls cleaned. Taking a little snapshot of the bottom. Pretty much stock other than this channel mod they've done. But see what we can make of that. Well, I'm putting a good signal into this. All the controls are real scratchy. It's real dirty, but the case is in good shape. That's why I bought it. Now it's starting to come in a little bit. And these are a channel mod. So, let me clean all these controls first, and then see what's up.
What about it, dog? I'm doing as little as I get by with.
Seems like I got it working. What's going on, dog man? You getting all that bleed over and crap from channel 6? Roger. Sometimes they're throwing me an S7 down here on 3. They got me up in the red on channel 6. Yeah, I'm talking on a Cobra 1000 I got for $60. Yeah, I got it, said it received but didn't transmit. Well, there's a bunch of power mods that caused it to let go. It gave up the ghost. So I took a final and a driver out of a Cobra 29, and here we are. I also polished this up pretty good. It was covered in dust and tobacco tar. I'm just glad it works. And the picture, they showed it was on, and the meter lights and stuff wasn't working. They just weren't in the socket. The meter lights were hanging down underneath the meters. Wallpaper bought one too, but he wasn't as lucky. So yours really don't work, does it, Wallpaper?
Not yet.
I also took a channel mod out of this. They didn't do it right. Yeah, we both bought broken Cobra 1000s from the same guy for $60. I bought something, I think I bought a Cobra 2000 or something off of them a couple of years ago. Well, not only does it work though, this thing's got a killer receive. Yeah, pretty good audio too, doing almost 25 watts. You want to buy it? Ten four. Well, I still had to do a lot of work, maintenance and stuff. I put new capacitors in there and scraped all that old brown glue off. That was some of the reason it was lacking. When I took it out of the box, the receive worked, but it was real low. I think I got it just where it needs to be. Alright, I got my tone generator on, doing kind of like you do on the Syncor normal, putting your mic up here. Got the mic gain set at 100. See, just a hair of overmodulation. Just a hair. That's all the way up. If I crank it down, somewhere in between 3/4 and up, it'll pretty much perfect. Hello, audio, 1, 2. Hello, audio. Hello, hello. little bit of a pinching, just not much. I mean, these can run pretty loud. But when I first started, I mean, this thing, if you looked between these, the signal here, I mean, it was flat, like a gap like that, and the very top was just totally flat, just total box cars. But I don't know. Now, if you look on my Radio Shack meter, which is a very stingy meter, see about 3.5 watts. Audio. Audio. Hello, hello. Audio. The mic gain all the way up, almost a little over 12, but back where I had it. Audio. Hello, hello. About 3.5 to 10, and that's a pretty stingy meter. But that's about where it should be. I mean, you can turn it down a little bit more, but I just like having the ability to crank it up a little farther and talk farther away from the mic. It still shouldn't overmodulate. I got the meter set just right here too. Hello, audio. Hello, audio. Anyway, pretty good radio for $60. Couple hours worth of recapping and going through the alignment. PLL lock's perfect, voltage perfect, receive is perfect. Now we'll just hook her back up to the antenna. I really need to clean up this mess here a little bit. I'm working on 3 or 4 radios at once, but squelch off. She receives great now. Got the speaker hooked up to speaker 2. But yeah, I was going to put a switching power supply in here. Here's just a little tip. Don't do it if you want to use your clock. If you want to replace it with a frequency counter, that's great. But this clock will not work without a 60 hertz AC tap right off of the transformer. The transformer puts out about 18 or 19 volts before it goes to the regulator of pure AC, and that's where this clock gets it from. Because even if I switch this to DC on the back, it'll shut the radio off, but the clock still works. The clock's always getting power. So if you just hook it up to 12 volts DC, it'll just stay at 12 and it'll never move. Let's see, looking at the schematic here, show you what I mean. I can find it. There we go. Here's the clock diagram, but see, here's your power supply. Here's your transformer coming off the mains. Puts out about 19 volts AC. Follows up through here. It's got diodes, so it can't back feed through here, but it runs straight over to the clock. If you look from the clock, it runs straight over to where the clock gets power. So none of the clock will work. There's no crystal oscillator or anything. It works directly off the AC, just like many alarm clocks did, you know, back in the 80s. So my only option, if I want to put a different power supply in there, the reason I was thinking that, because the power supply in these is kind of weak. I've got these like little Meanwell 8 amp switching supplies I put in a lot of these base radios when the power supply is flaky. It has a 1061 transistor as the regulator, which you can replace with an NTE 152 or something else, but that thing gets red hot. I mean, you could literally put a frying pan, if you could get a frying pan on the heat sink, and you could sit there and fry an egg. I don't know. I rebuilt the power supply. I put new thermal grease on it. And I put thermal grease where the heat sink meets the chassis. The thing just runs red hot. So in cases like that, I like to put one of these power supplies in it. I think, if I'm not mistaken, on the 2000, you can change the power supply, because the frequency counter clock module in there has a quartz crystal, if I remember. I'll have to look it up, but because you can run off of DC and the clock still works. This only works the clock off of AC. So unless you want to update this with a frequency counter or something else that doesn't have a clock, you're gonna have to keep the original power supply or come up with a little 19-volt AC transformer and stick it somewhere. I don't have room to do that with the stock transformer if I want to put one of these in there. But these are very good power supplies. As long as you get Meanwell, don't buy any other brand. This is what Ranger uses in these kind of radios like this. They use a 12 amp one, I believe. The RCI 29 uses a 12 or 14 amp. The 2547 uses a 6 or 7 amp, but I get these 8 amp ones. They're only about $15, and they're pretty darn good. And the voltage is adjustable from 10 up to 14, so set it at 13.7 or 13.8 and just go. They can run all day, all night. They don't even get warm. Unless, of course, you use a too small one and too big of a radio, but something like this only needs about a 5 amp comfortably at full modulation all day long. The stock power supply is only about 2 amps, so it just runs hot. I mean, it cools off sitting here receiving, but as I talk, it gets hotter and hotter and hotter. And if you ever have that issue, of course, you know, putting the switching supply in there is going to change that, or upgrade your regulator. But you still have the point of the transformer. The 19-volt transformer that's in there is just not a very big transformer. It's a tiny little thing. So it's only going to do stock radio numbers. If you really wanted to put MOSFETs in here and get 30 or 40 watts out of it, you got to change the power supply, and then you lose your clock. I know the clock doesn't matter to some people, but I like it to actually be on and functioning. Other little tips. Part of the issues with this radio was on some of the capacitors and some of the stuff near the finals, and on this side here near the modulation transformer, we had the good old corrosive glue issue where they glue down the big components with a clear glue from the factory, but it turns brown and it becomes conductive, and there's no easy way to get it off. I haven't found any solvents that can get it off without messing up the silk screen and stuff on the board. What you got to do, you got to get some of these dental tools. I got these at O'Reilly Auto Parts. You use them for changing the little seals on lines and stuff. You just got to get in there, put a little alcohol or a little contact cleaner, and just sit in there and scrape all that glue off. You'll have to take some of the components out and clean them off, especially coils. I had some of the hot glue under the last 2 coils in here too, or corrosive glue. Newer radios, like a lot of these Cobra 29s and junk radios I have down here, they just put wax around the PLL section, and they'll put hot glue on anything that needs to be held down. If you need to remove hot glue, unhook the radio from power and whatnot, put some 91 or higher isopropyl alcohol, soak it for a little bit, and the glue will just separate. And you still got to kind of dig it out or heat it up a little bit to get it off the component totally if you're putting that component back in. But hot glue is a lot easier to work with than this Tech Bond or whatever the heck they used back in the day. It sucks. Especially on these President radios. They are covered with that corrosive glue. And that's 9 times out of 10 if you get one that's bad. If you take all the toroid transformers out and you take all the large capacitors out and you take the main regulator out of the CPU board and you clean all that crap off, you put it back together, make sure there's still the wire's not corroded to the point where it's falling apart, but you put it back together and there you go. Most of the time everything just comes back the way it should be. But on these right here, these are pretty simple. This 1000 GTL is based off of a 29 GTL or an 89 GTL or an 87 GTL, which is very similar to like a 29 XLR, but it has a different PLL. A 29 XLR has an 858 chip like an old Washington, whereas this has the same chip as like a new Cobra, newer. These Chinese ones, they've replaced the IC with some kind of weird board. But anyway, that's the main thing. Check all your caps, especially big ones. Anything's swelled, anything's leaking, change it. If you can, change them all. It doesn't cost that much. It just takes some time. You can do it with soldering wick and flux it up a little, or you can use a desoldering tool. Just take your time, check the polarity. And the thing is, I like to take pictures of the board before and after, but you need to check the polarity of the part as you pull it out. Some of the silk screening on here shows the plus and minus is backwards. If you look in the schematic or in the Sam's manual, if you have one, you can see it. But on the silk screening, sometimes a few of the capacitors, the positive side is backwards. It's like that in the clock circuit on the bottom for the alarm beeper. The capacitor's backwards. So if you go by the silk screening, you're going to mess things up. So take them out one by one and look at exactly how you pulled it out and stuff the new part in immediately. Fold the leads over, go to the next one, do all that till all your parts are done, and then go solder them all up. And if you're worried, about putting something in backwards, do about 10 capacitors at a time, and then hook up the radio, make sure it works, and then keep going. If you've never done it before, it's not that hard. It's just very time consuming. But if you get all the glue off the parts, and you change your caps, and then physically, if you have a continuity meter that beeps, you can check your diodes, check them both ways. If it beeps one way and not the other, it's all right. If it beeps both ways, you probably have a bad diode or something in that circuit is shorted. And just between finding a few bad diodes, 2 bad tantalums, 1 bad disc cap, of course the reason the final and driver went out of here, somebody did one of these stupid power mods from back in the day, and it's pretty much guaranteed to cook your final, especially if you don't put new thermal grease on it. So I took all the power mods out, put the limiter back in, tuned it up properly, and now she sings. The only thing physically looking wrong with this one is it's got like a spot in between these 2 screens that won't clean, and it's got a lot of, I don't know, not just scratching, it's got pitting on the chrome here and there, but overall it's in pretty good shape. The top covers are perfect. Now the top covers on the 1000 are real wood. The top cover on the 2000 is particle board covered with veneer. If I pop this top off of here, you can see this is real wood. These were made out of real wood. But if I take the top off of that one, it's heavier. It's crushed, particle board with veneer, and they chip easy. This one's built solid. If you scratch it up or something, you could always resand it and stain it and change the color or whatever. I mean, it's pretty solid. There's no mods or anything around back. I did change this because when I was checking around the power supply, this thing snapped off, so I took this off of another radio. But somebody even put a warranty seal in here. I don't know why. All they did is hack it. I guess they don't want you to go in there and unhack it, but $60 is what I paid for this, and she sings. She works great. Great receive, great transmit. So if you got an old radio like this, try to find a Sam's manual. Also cbtricks.org. cbtricks.com was kind of shut down years ago, but cbtricks.org. Try to find your schematic, try to find your parts list. That'll help you if you don't have a bunch of capacitors and things in inventory like me. Go order what you need. Kind of stay away from the kits, because in the kits they're full of 10 and 16 volt capacitors like this was from the factory. You want to put at least 25 volt capacitors in here. If you get one little power surge, one little thing, it takes your caps out with it. They're only rated so much, so all the kits only come with 10 and 16 volt capacitors. It's just setting up suicide. I mean, your radio will go out, you'll wonder, you'll think you did something wrong, and it's really just the cap kit you bought was trash. So make a list of what you need. Go to some place like DigiKey and just order 10 of everything. And it doesn't cost that much. It's probably cheaper than the kit, and you'll have spares for doing more of these. The only thing that's going to cost a lot is the bigger caps. Like the one I put in the power supply was $10,000. I changed the modulation caps with a 1000 and a 3300 from 470 and 1000. Other than that, all caps are stock value, but they're 25 or 50 volts. So upgrade your caps. Your resistors usually don't go bad, except for the big one that's on the clock. It's a 7-watt resistor, ceramic. But as long as that one's not burnt, you're probably in good shape. And it does help to take your heat sinks out and re-grease all your heat sinks and grease where they go to the chassis. Other than that, hook her up and run her. She should be good. This applies to the 2000 or Washington or Madison. They're not that difficult. Stay away from channel mods and swing mods and all that crap. Because as you can see, this one, I set it up, key in like, less than 4 watts, and audio, 1, 2, audio. almost 20 watts of modulation. I mean, you don't need more than that. Get an amplifier. So, you know, somebody's put one of those stupid swing mods in here where it's keying 1 and swinging to 30. You're going to cook it. It's going to sound like crap. Your power's off channel. You know, your power shouldn't really be much more than 4 times of what your dead key is. So I'm kind of above that right now a little bit because I set it to about 110% modulation. That's not bad, but when you clip it and do a bunch of crazy stuff, no, you're asking for trouble. Your power's not really on channel. Like I said, I just do it to where I like stock mics, and if I turn the mic gain all the way up, I can still talk with the stock mic at a reasonable distance, and it's almost like a power mic. If you're going to run a power mic all the time, just set it to 100% and forget it. You know, don't go over because it'll overdrive. When the modulation circuit was all cut out of here, like I said, once I got the power back, it was swinging over 20 watts, but it was nothing but a square wave, and it was all bleeding over 3 or 4 channels. So don't do that. These work pretty good set to stock. They're not a big, huge performer in power. If you want a bunch of power, go get you an export radio and break the law, I guess. I mean, I got this one set to where it should be, but you know, you get you one of these Galaxies or Rangers if you want to do 50 watts or 100 watts. You know, or go get your ham license. Well, that's another story. You can run 1,500 watts there once you get your general. Or you get your tech license, you can still run 10 meter sideband, so you know, that's always an option. I try to run all this stuff stock, and I run these things, believe it or not, on 10 and 12 meters. You know, I've got the real stuff over here. You know, just on CB land, I just run stock radios, so it is what it is. But go ahead, if you got one of these, try to recap it, try to get you a manual, take your time. Don't set your soldering iron too hot, don't burn traces, just take your time, get you a little solder wick and flux or a desoldering tool for like $30 off of Amazon, and you know, you can fix your own stuff. You don't need a tech. I mean, now if you've done everything right, you've changed everything, you've changed your finals, still not transmitting, that's what that book will come in handy for. Get you a good voltmeter and just start tracing down, see what voltage should be at each IC. You know, just try to trace signal. 9 times out of 10 it comes down to one stupid little part, one bad can, one bad diode, or a bad final. It's usually not catastrophic where every part in there is bad unless it's been hit by lightning. So, you know, you can give it a shot, try it yourself, and you might be surprised. So that's all I got for you today. 73's, the Whiskey Man over and out. We'll catch you in the next one.